It's time for Miller and Williams on Iowa Everywhere. Presented by Prairie Meadows Racetrack and Casino. This is Iowa Everywhere.
What's going on? We are having a earlier in the week, Miller and Williams today for a lot of different reasons, but most importantly, man, there's just so much to talk about, and it's good to do this earlier in the week. My name is Chris Williams, joined as always by Jon Miller in Kansas City. And what's going on, brother? How's life?
Life's good. Dog isn't. Ginger's. I took her upstairs. I said, "Hey, can you please, have Ginger with you?" I said to my wife. Ginger's sitting at the top of the stairs where the door's shut. She's whining and whimpering because she can't be near me, and it's driving me crazy.
Well, you can just let her down because I've got a whining and whimpering dog right beside me as well.
But she doesn't snore like Ginger.
This is true.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
This is true. Ginger's kind of part of the show, I feel.
I know she is, just not today. I don't want to deal with it.
You're just not feeling it today?
No, I'm not. It was both of them behind me snoring. Winnie is not as loud as Ginger. You've never seen Winnie yet.
I didn't know Winnie was a thing.
Yeah, Winnie's a thing. We got a dog for our dog a couple of years ago. They are half sisters.
What do you mean they're half? Like they're actually half sisters?
They had the same dam. Okay. The same mom.
So do they hump each other?
They don't. I've never seen the humping of the two. I've actually never seen. Neither of these dogs have ever humped anything.
Oh God, Dirks will hump anything.
Yeah, well,
a machine.
Well, they you know what? Dogs are really observant, and they typically pick things up.
I see what you did there. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for listening. Appreciate our sponsor, Prairie Meadows Racetrack and Casino. We have a lot to get to. I want to talk Charlie Jones, Iowa versus Purdue. I need you to talk me out of making a big bet on Purdue because I'm
your guy.
I don't understand the line. I want to talk about you've pulled some statistics on Iowa's offense that we want to run through. TJ Hawkinson got traded, and again, I want to hit on this Big 12 television contract too because this is a really, really, really big deal. We touched on it on two guys named Chris, but we didn't have a lot of time to go in depth on that. Let's just start right there. You used the word, John, yesterday in a text message we were having. You said the word miracle when you were describing the numbers in this new Big 12 television contract. I guess I hadn't taken it there in my mind, but I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I was in Nashville last year when that all went down. Well, when it was starting to go down. And I remember the doomsday stuff, national writers comparing it to the American, which pulls like $7 million a year from its television contract. This new Big 12 will be upwards of in the 50 millions because it's a lowercase scenario with counting like the current playoff. Everybody's going to get a bump with this 12-team playoff. So, I mean, they could be reaching for 60 million. So, I mean, I want to just put it into perspective for, like an Iowa fan out there. Y'all are like, oh, we're making 100 or whatever it's going to be. I get it. But if you're Jamie Pollard, you just got a $10 million a year raise for your athletic department, which is you can make that go a long way. If you're Cincinnati, you're going from like 7 to 9 million to 50. And you just created some, Houston and Cincinnati and BYU have always been pretty good. Now they're going to have the resources of some of the big boys. So this is a really massive win for this new look league.
That's a good point that you bring up relative to the Cincinnatis, the Houstons, the BYUs, because those, Houston obviously has an enormous population base, and there's a ton of talent in Texas. Cincinnati is a pretty large city. I think people, it's 7-figure population. And some people would prefer to stay home or prefer to go and attend college in a city and not somewhere in the middle of nowhere where a lot of colleges are located. So, yeah, those programs, their profiles are going to take a steep rise. Then the rest of the Big 12 programs, to me, if you would have told me the day that Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were leaving to the Big 12, that don't worry, just chill out, John. I'm not saying if you told me this, you personally, John, don't worry, chill out. My sources tell me that the Big 12 is going to be able to put together their own TV deal and actually increase revenues per school without Texas and Oklahoma beyond where we are with Texas and Oklahoma. I would have said, I've never had a more homer take than that. I would have just said, you're crazy. It's not going to happen. Well, it has happened, and it's almost unthinkable that it has happened. I do think, though, now reverse engineering it in my mind, we've talked about this before. You're talking about a land grab. They're not making any more land. This is, ESPN absolutely needed this, especially how much the Big Ten has disassociated with ESPN. They really, really needed it. I thought that, Fox and or Amazon or some other players would come in really, really strong. Maybe it's just not Amazon's time yet. Maybe that's going to be in 5 or 6 years from now after they've had some practice, if you will. So it's a great day if you're a fan of a Big 12 school. It's a great day for Iowa State and their fans. You basically now have an easier path to the college football playoff. Not just because of, Texas and Oklahoma are out of the league, and traditionally they've been, better football programs than anybody else. But you also have an expanded playoff that's going to 12 teams. So today, Iowa State's getting more money, and they have an easier path to make it into the college football playoff picture. That's a heck of a deal. I mean, it's a phenomenal time.
Couple points I would make if you would have told me back then that they would get near the $40-50 million mark, I would have thought it would have had to have been because Amazon is in the mix.
Right.
And they get that money and don't have to give up exposure, which is really, really huge. I was also told by a really, really good source last week when it started to become pretty evident that this was coming down the pike. Now, I didn't have all the details, but I was told, to piggyback off of what you just said, and kudos to you because you're all over it, that the Big Ten going exclusively away from ESPN was massive for the Big 12.
Sure.
Because ESPN looked at this and they said, we still want to be the home for college football. We can't just be catering to the East Coast,
right,
and to the SEC. We have to have Midwest football. So that was a really big deal for the Big 12.
Look, I mean, this stuff isn't complicated. Sometimes you just have simple mathematical deduction, and I'm no mathematical genius. It's just a land grab. And yeah, sure, the Big 12 can, maybe send a little bouquet of flowers to the Big 10 saying thanks for doing what you did. Doesn't matter. You're all getting paid. All the facilities upgrades that Iowa State has done and are looking to do will continue to be funded. I saw an article from the Cedar Rapids Gazette just this morning. Last year, Iowa State's athletic department revenues topped $100 million for the first time ever. I mean, things are going real, real well.
Mm-hmm.
And if Jamie gets this, what's the name for the little town that they're going to build?
Town.
So yeah, you get that town built. I mean, dude, these are peak times. I don't know how it gets much better relative to everything that's going on outside of the football, the basketball programs, the wrestling program. I don't know how it gets any better than this. I'm not putting a ceiling on Iowa State. I'm just saying this is pretty amazing. This is dream best case scenario 10 years ago. If you could look down the road and see what Iowa State has 10 years later. I mean, I can't remember when the Jacobson practice facility was built, if that's been in the last 10 years or not. But you look around, you'll see a side town, you'll see, you'll look at the P&L statements and say, what in the world kind of crazy? I thought that we were at risk from going to the MAC at one point in time. No, you're not. Mm-hmm. You're stable. And the stability within this new look Big 12 is probably better than it's been since the Big 8 days. that the stability of the future of the conference will be better, because I'm not trying to be crass or be condescending here, but everybody kind of looks the same at this party,
Yeah.
or looks similar. There's not one person over here with the flowing locks and the pec deck that stands out beyond anybody else. There's some parity relative to athletic department performance, and that just when you have everybody within a similar range, that's good, because that means somebody's probably not going to get plucked to destabilize the future of the conference. It's as stable as it's been since the Big 8 days. And if you want to call that stable, sure, it was stable. It just wasn't making money. Now you have the printing press and stability.
The biggest thing is all of these schools have been told for decades that they're not wanted.
Right.
So it's not like Central Florida all of a sudden is going to have like wandering eyes, because they know that, that the SEC doesn't want us.
Right.
You tell me Iowa State wouldn't have gone to the Big Ten 5 years ago? No, the Big Ten doesn't want them, right? Like, there's no wandering eyes here because there's nowhere else to go. And they've all learned in the last year that the strength is in their numbers. And the other thing I would point out that I love about this future league, John, is the passion of the fan bases. Like, there's not a lot of empty stadiums in this new Big 12. They're very rabid. Houston would probably be the lowest as far as that goes. We'll see if getting them in the Big 12 changes that. It could.
Right. Are you familiar with the old claymation Christmas special, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
Absolutely.
Okay. Who isn't? And if you're not, you need some help. So who was the star of that show? Rudolph, right? He was the star of the show. Rudolph is the SEC and the Big Ten. But you know who the heroes of that show were?
The Big 12?
The Misfit Toys.
Okay.
We're on the island of Misfit Toys. Rudolph and Hermie and Yukon Cornelius randomly go bump into them on the island of Misfit Toys. You know, we get a chance to meet him, a water gun that shoots out glue, and, toys that maybe just don't fit in with the rest. So Rudolph and them get kicked out of that island. They couldn't stay there. I mean, that's bad. But what happens at the end credits of that movie when Rudolph, with his nose so bright, guides Santa's sleigh that night? Who are the toys that are the heroes, the stars that are going to make all the little girls and boys of the world happy? It's the Misfit Toys. They were sitting there on their island saying, no, they forgot about us. It's going to be another year of loneliness. Nope. They see the red beacon, the blinking beacon coming out of the sky. It's Rudolph, who did not forget, picked up the Misfit Toys, and then they were the heroes. They got taken to homes, and they were loved. The Big 12 has been the island of Misfit Toys for a long time. They just forgot. Y'all forgot how the show ended. It ended with a happy ending, and you're getting it right now. And quite frankly, we can just stop the show right here. I'm not going to do any better than that the rest of the way.
George Costanza showmanship. I'm out.
I know. I'm out.
I'm good. See ya.
Yep.
That's well done. Iowa, Purdue, Charlie Jones. We got all sorts of – I didn't realize Scott Docterman's piece in The Athletic today that, like, Purdue and Braum and Iowa hate each other so much. Like, I didn't know about this. Like, Braum would, like, text guys when they're on their official visit to Iowa. And, like, there's a lot of, like, background there. I knew that Purdue had won 4 of 5. And, obviously, the Charlie Jones and who's the other guy? Tavon Tracy going there. I guess I didn't realize how heated it had technically been between these two programs. But why? Can you explain to me this game opened at 7 and it dropped to 3.5 within like an hour? What am I missing? Because, like, I mean, I'll give Iowa credit. They played well. They beat the team in front of them. They did good things on Saturday. Like, it was never in doubt. This was never, like an inferior team that you let hang around. I never felt that. Man, I just feel like Purdue's a really easy bet here at this number. Can you talk me out of that?
I mean, So when the number came out, I'm sure the big time gamblers, they're looking at the weather. It looks like we could have potential rain,
Yeah.
which isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world for football is wind.
And that would hurt
Um,
Purdue.
as
Considerably more than
Iowa
that.
State fans well know, being that
Yeah.
they built their stadium in very valuable wind turbine electricity generating land there in Ames. And Purdue is going to be impacted by the wind probably more than Iowa would be. The wind is the biggest disruptor of football games there is. And it looks like it could wreak some havoc this week. Now, Iowa actually, for the first time all season, looked competent on offense. And if you've listened to my post-game reactions a few times this year, I've made the point over and over, Iowa's offensive performance relative to its peers doesn't need to be good. It just needs to be competent. And competent is not even average. Competent is, 90th to 100th in total offense or offensive numbers. That's all Iowa has to be probably to win 9 or 10 games. I know that infuriates some Iowa State fans, and I can understand that, given that Iowa plays in a division that is gettable, let's just say, year in, year out. So Iowa was competent last week. Spencer Petras actually looked pretty good. He had a really, really clean pocket, and his footwork was really good. This week, Purdue, their defense is not as good as it was a year ago. Karloftis is not there to create nightmares for people. But obviously, Purdue's calling card is their offense. Jeff Brom schemes against Iowa's defense better than anyone in the Big Ten, maybe better than anybody ever has in the Ferentz era. That's a concern. But his scheme is oftentimes his scheme, I think, could be disrupted by 20+ mile per hour winds. It means a lot more short passes, a lot more lateral passes. It means probably for at least 2 quarters of the game. And if it's a crosswind, then it's the entire game. It means there's going to be limited opportunities to take shots downfield. So that might be the one thing to talk you out of it, is the unpredictability, Chris, of the wind. To me, this feels like a game you'd want to stay away from. But I do think, what's the total on this one?
Well, hold on. And let me just give a quick update to, we are recording this Wednesday morning. It's 10:30 right now.
Yeah.
Weather.com. It has rain and 20 to 25 mile per hour winds.
Yep.
During that football game.
That's the real. What's the total? Pull up, you know what? Go check out your friends at Circa. Pull up the total, because I'm kind of also thinking that there might be the play here. Now, of course, you're saying, just take the under. Like last week. Let's give a little Prince of Parlays update.
41.
41's the total?
Yeah.
If the win wasn't in play, I would take the over.
Yeah, because that's your play right there. That's your tell on why the number is where it is.
Yeah.
You just look at that number. That's why it's 3.5.
I think it's the wind. Last week, one of the most astounding stats, if it's even a stat, from the Iowa Northwestern game was both teams only had 8 possessions. I had to double check statistics at multiple sites just to make sure that was not wrong. Iowa scored on 7 of its 8 possessions. Northwestern only had 8 possessions. It was incredible. So with wind at play, I'm probably not going to touch the total, and I'm probably not going to touch the line. It just, if I was going to touch the line, I might look at just something, see what kind of odds I could get on Iowa on the money line. Otherwise, and it wouldn't be a big lean into it wager. I don't like it. I think your spidey sense is right. I would stay away from it.
Just checking it for Ames real quick as well.
Yeah,
because I know it's
there.
You're looking at 10 to 15 mile per hour winds.
Snow?
No snow.
Driving snow. Tornadoes?
49 is your high.
November 23rd, and there was like tornadoes at the Iowa State football game.
That's the most iconic game I think I can ever remember. The tornado game.
Was that 03?
That was 05.
05. Colorado. Okay.
Big play, Brent Curvey.
Yeah. Yeah. That was pretty amazing. The storm.
That was actually one of my favorite moments ever, being an Iowa State
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was fun.
That is, it's indicative of something. Like if you asked little Gracie today, what's your favorite college moment so far? She'd say, well, it was just hanging out on Massachusetts Avenue in Lawrence, Kansas when my team was, winning the national championship. Chris, what about you? My favorite time at Iowa State was out in the parking lot at a football game when tornadoes came. Steve, easy boy. Easy boy.
Little Gracie. Is she going to be out of the game this week before we move on?
She is going to the game this week. Yeah.
Right. Sure.
And part of me thinks
Jayhawks need her, man. They need her.
Part of me thinks it's an excuse because we've asked her to come spend the night here on Friday night because my wife and I are driving up to Des Moines on Friday. My wife is going to attend some famous podcast ladies that my wife is speaking. So we're going up for that, and I'm going to chill out. I'm just going to walk around Jordan Creek Mall mumbling to myself while she's
come on over to Bondu.
Are you going to be in Bondu?
Probably. Where the hell else am I going to be?
All right, we may do that. I didn't know that you'd be home, but I might. If check with the wife.
Yeah.
I'm good around kids. I can entertain the kids.
You can just all right, fine. I'll just leave you with the kids, and I'll.
Didn't say that.
No.
Didn't say leave me with the kids.
My 3-year-old, you wouldn't want any piece of her. We got a major separation anxiety case going on right now.
Yeah.
She does not like life without me.
Yeah.
It is a real thing.
Kind of like Ginger and me.
Well, Elise doesn't snore, though. We got the tonsils and adenoids taken care of, so we're done with that. The Charlie Jones thing. Let me ask you. I just want to read you the Kirk Ferentz quote, okay?
Okay.
And I want to see if you believe this, or is this real or coach speak? Or it's not. I guess I didn't write down the quote, but basically yesterday, Kirk Ferentz said that Charlie Jones is a much better receiver now than he was when he was at Iowa. That he's improved a lot. Last year, he was basically Iowa's fourth option. His career high was 3 catches in a game. Now he is second in the country in receptions on the year behind Iowa State's Xavier Hutchinson. Small world, if you're an Iowa fan. Do you actually believe that? Like, do you think Charlie Jones just this offseason just blossomed into this all Big Ten type receiver, or is Kirk kind of covering his back?
Kirk was asked a question that he had to have anticipated was going to come, right?
Well, yeah.
And I feel it's a bad answer. There's nothing good for him or his program in that answer. If we take him at face value and we say, yeah, Charlie Jones is a much improved receiver, that means that Iowa's ability to develop receiving talent sucks. Because Charlie Jones was there for 2-3 years, and
3 years.
He goes to Purdue in one offseason, and now he's a much better receiver. So that's an indictment of your receiving development program, as if that part of your program needed any more indictment. If he's just coach speaking, it's just dumb. He could have said something different because it just made him look foolish. I've got to open the door now because apparently Ginger has been let down here. So
this is what happens.
She's going to keep scratching on the dang door until I let her in. But anyway, I think it's a silly thing to say that wasn't thought out by a guy that had a week to think about it. It's not a big deal. It's not as big as some of the gaffes that he and Brian have had in recent weeks with what they've said. But it's like, what are you doing? What are you saying that for? It just makes you look bad. I mean, Iowa's program was not the routes that Iowa runs, the route trees they have, the passing game schemes they have. Charlie Jones was never going to have 25% of the success at Iowa that he's had at Purdue.
No,
I don't think it's a given that he was going to do this at Purdue. So in the right system that allows him to showcase the talents that he has, yeah, he's better, but it's more of a system than a Charlie Jones development, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. And I don't know. I just wish everybody would. I'm getting so tired of coach speak. Like, the older I get, I don't need to tell you this, but it's just like, it was a better opportunity for him. He's playing with a childhood friend in O'Connell. Just, I hope Iowa fans have kind of come around on that after watching the offense this year. I think most
that first week when I kept tweeting about Charlie Jones and it was pissing people off, which I don't mind doing. Now those people are nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and everyone's like, okay, good.
When they played on that Thursday night against Penn State,
yes,
it was pretty salty.
It was real salty, and I was like just bringing bags of salt out, and people were not having it. Yeah, I've got this interesting kind of thing going on Twitter right now. So, but yeah,
I hope that the weather gets better. Like, I mean, I'd like to see Riley Moss and those guys go against their old teammate. Like, that's fun. Like, this is sports. They don't hate each other. Like, just I want to see them match up. Let's go.
Right. If the weather gets better and doesn't impact the passing game, then I would absolutely jump on Purdue and the over.
Okay, so you had some notes, and I've seen this getting tossed around on Twitter a little bit about the caliber of defenses that Iowa has seen this year.
Yeah.
Has it changed your opinion on the offense at all?
Not really. It hasn't changed my opinion on the archaic aspects of their scheme, and I still believe that this scheme needs some tweaks to make it more complementary and less predictable, and they can still run most all the same things that they want to run. They can still have the identity that Kirk wants to have, but they're just less predictable. And I'm talking about more shotgun, running out of shotgun, never having a fullback in not never, but incredibly rarely. Basically 11 personnel be your primary, package. One running back, one tight end, 3 receivers, shotgun, pistol looks. Okay. That's not exotic. That's not a wholesale change. It just makes you less predictable. So no, it hasn't changed my outlook on the offense, but it has given me a little more hope relative to these last 4 games against teams that you can say if Iowa plays competently on offense, they have a chance to win every one of them. Illinois is number 1 in the country in total defense. Michigan is number 3. Iowa, by the way, is 5. Ohio State is number 6. Iowa State is number 11, and Rutgers is number 12. 5 of Iowa's 8 opponents are in the top 12 in total that they've faced so far, are in the top 12 of total defense in the country. Now, total defense isn't the end-all, be-all defensive statistic and doesn't take into account style of play and things like that, but it's indicative. So over 50% of Iowa's schedule so far has been played against teams that are playing at elite level of defense this year. Then throw in South Dakota State, the team ranked number 1 in FCS. I think they have a top 3 defense in FCS. That's 6 of 8 teams that are playing really, really, really good defense. And you go back to the beginning of the year, and Iowa still had a lot more offensive line development to do, more than I thought that they would have, more than most people thought that they would have. So, yeah, it doesn't soften my heart to the things that I've said, the criticisms I've offered, because my criticisms have been more relative to the scheme, but I've been saying these things for a decade plus now. But it does give me a little more optimism going into the last 3 games, although I will add that Minnesota has the 7th ranked defense in the country, so that's not a pushover either. But Nebraska's horrible on defense. Mm-hmm. Purdue is not good on defense. And then Wisconsin is, typically salty. The 3-man front and what they do at their linebackers typically gives Iowa problems. Wisconsin's 33rd overall in defense. So anyway, that was just a little, bit of hopium I threw out. I figured that this year I've been somewhat of a, some people might say a jerk with my commentary, but whatever.
Have you looked at like yards per play and stuff like that compared to the total defense with those? And you don't have to. I'm just curious because I am wondering how much playing in the Big Ten West will impact those total defensive numbers.
There's no doubt. Right, you're right. I mean, this goes back to the thing that Iowa and Iowa State fans have been battling about for years, and that is, you play in a conference that doesn't play defense, and you play in a conference that doesn't have good offense, right?
Exactly.
So I want to see if I can find yards per play.
I'm just curious, just because I actually agree with you. I was thinking about that watching watching them against Northwestern. I'm like, well, this is Iowa's offense against a bad defense. And it looks like
Okay.
kind of like it was back in the day, because they can actually see. That's my thing. Like when Petrus has a running game, he's not that bad because you can do a little play action, right? Like, and it frees him up, and then like that's what he's supposed to be. But when you're going against a good defense and Iowa can't run the ball, then that changes the entire scheme that they've run for 20 years under Kirk.
Right. So yards per play defense allowed. Number 1 in the country, Iowa.
Yeah, surprising.
Number 2, Illinois.
Okay.
Number 3, Michigan. Number 8, Ohio State. Number 13, Rutgers. This is number 18, Iowa State. So this is all very representative.
Yep. There you go. Hope. It's a very dangerous thing. I've lost all of hope this year, so
it is a dangerous thing. Wisconsin's actually 54th. I'm curious where Purdue is. I'm scrolling down the list. I'm getting really low. Purdue's 90th. So at any rate.
Last thing I had for us today, I just wanted to touch on the TJ Hawkinson trade. Really interesting that I mean, I'm a Vikings fan. I have mixed emotions. I'm glad they got Hawkinson. I also think that they're an incredibly overrated 6-1 team. I think that they've been very fortunate to be 6-1. But I guess if you're paying Kirk Cousins what you pay him, you need to get him as many weapons as you can. And that makes me happy. Good for Hawkinson, though, right? To get out of the abyss that is the Detroit franchise. This is cool for an Iowa fan.
I'm so glad that Hawkinson's no longer a Lion, because now I have zero reasons to tune into that abysmal football again, other than the jerseys, the uniforms. I like their combinations. But you know what? I wish I had Hawkinson on my fantasy league, because I think his production's probably going to go up. I mean, you're playing on the same field with Jefferson.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent, Thielen right now. But I mean, if I'm Kirk Cousins, that is an unbelievable safety outlet that can do damage. I think it makes their offense much more difficult to prepare for, because, obviously you got Dalvin Cook, running back, Madison, whatever. That's good too. But Jefferson's the biggest threat. He's one of the most dangerous threats there is in the entire league. Now, and teams are always trying to scheme with the tight end and Kirk Cousins not being a prolific passer, not being a prolific quarterback. I think Hawkinson and Cousins are going to form a really quick, fast friendship. I think Hawkinson's numbers are probably going to increase by 30 to 50% relative to production and what he had over Detroit.
Was reading about this yesterday, and don't forget about the connections that the Vikings' new GM and head coach have with Kyle Shanahan, and their admiration for George Kittle as well. And a lot of comps being drawn there between Kittle and Hawkinson, and how they want to use him. So that was something to keep in mind as well.
Those two, the comparisons end when you leave the field, although the hair is there. But yeah, I think the utilization, Hawkinson isn't the blocker that Kittle is, but nobody is.
Yeah,
at that position, and Kittle's borderline psychotic, which really helps. But I think Hawkinson has, I think from just an offensive toolbox set, removing blocking for a second, Hawkinson's better ball skills, but Kittle's the better tight end. But still, I think if I'm a Vikings fan, I feel, hey, our offense probably just got better. Yeah, is that 6-1 a little hollow? Do I really buy into that? No, I do not. I don't think that they're the 2 seed in the NFC, and I think that they'd be embarrassed. But I think that they got a little closer with Hawkinson on the team for that 6-1 to be backed up a little bit more than they were without Hawkinson. I could be wrong. This could be a homer take, but since I started playing fantasy again in 2020, I spend, like everybody else, I spend 10 hours a Sunday watching Red Zone or watching NFL games. I watch the Thursday night games. I watch the Monday night games. I've watched more NFL in the last 3 years combined than I've probably watched since the 1980s.
It's fascinating how we mature or develop as sports fans, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, I didn't watch the NFL for 20 years, 18 years. When Grace was born in 2002, and I was doing work all Saturday for covering the Hawkeyes, I wasn't going to take Sunday away from my family. So I just didn't watch. And that's my nature. I'm all or nothing. I don't just dabble a little bit. So there for many years, I'm like, I don't even know who the hell these guys are in the league. But now that I'm back in fantasy, the kids are pretty much grown, or Mary's 13, but she's playing with her friends all the time. It's just me and Ginger watching NFL nonstop. So I'm back and I like it.
Yeah, and I mean, I watch every Vikings game like religiously. It's probably my favorite team in all of sports. But after that, like I'm not like I'll have Sunday Night Football on in the background, but I'm always working, or I'm watching NASCAR on a Sunday. I mean,
Holy cow, that pass that guy did this week.
wasn't that nuts?
That's like a video game. That's like playing the Daytona USA game back in the day and just riding the wall. There was a place that you could you had to have a perfect angle to hit the wall, and it bounced you off and increased your speed. Yeah. And that's how you could beat your best time. That was just absolutely incredible. One of the most epic things I've ever seen on a racetrack. Not that I'm like, once Dale Sr. died, my passion for watching NASCAR really kind of fell off. But yeah, I mean, just an amazing run.
That was one of my favorite sports moments ever, like of all sports.
Have you seen the stitched up edits of just the comments from all the other race car drivers on the track on their private radios to their pits? Just how freaking freaked out, amazed they were by it. I mean, that's the thing. It's crazy to me. But when the other drivers are like, I've never seen anything like that. Yeah. These guys are all half crazy to be in a race car at high speeds anyway. That tells you something.
The wildest one to me was when they kind of had the overhead type views, and it looked like his car was being sped up. Like it didn't.
He hammered it.
It didn't look real.
He accelerated into the wall. I saw some people, well, that was dangerous. Okay. But you know what? Him going into the wall where and how he did, it was nothing. There was no probably head bumps or anything. He knew what he was doing. He entered the wall at the right place, I guess, to enter the wall. And then he just used gravity and centrifugal force to right around. Nice. Well, and he needed to get by two guys, right?
Yeah, and like what made it so epic though was that he passes Hamlin, the guy he needed to beat to get into the next round to the championship race, at the finish line.
Yes.
Like you could not have. I don't think they could have scripted that. Like I don't even think it's possible that you could have scripted.
You couldn't recreate it intentionally. It was an amazing sports moment. That was just absolutely epic.
Anytime something happens in NASCAR that gets guys like you to pay attention, it's either somebody dies or it's something out of this world, which hardly ever happens. So I've been kind of taking a victory lap.
What track were they at? Were they at Martinsville?
Martinsville, yeah.
Okay, I thought so.
I don't think too. I think everybody's making a big deal like, oh, well, they can't do that all the time. Like, I don't think there's many tracks where that would work.
There's not. That's why, I mean, the little that I know, and I did not know what track it was, but I'm like, that's got to be one of these half mile. It's probably Martinsville. So
it's not really banked that much compared to like a Bristol. Like it just was perfect.
Yeah, you can't do that at Kansas Speedway. I mean, you'd be stupid. You're done. You're out of the mix.
You're going too fast. Like your car would disintegrate if you tried to do that at Kansas.
Once upon a time, Chris, when they broke ground on the Kansas Speedway, I paid money to have. I was one of the founding season ticket investors in that track. Wow. I didn't tell my wife about it. We didn't have the money, but I thought it'd be cool, so I did it anyway, which wound up costing me a leather jacket and a treadmill that she bought without telling me, just as payback. So this is like 1998, 1999 times. And there was a seat there with my name on it at one point in time. I don't know if it's still there. I never attended a race there.
Oh my God, really?
Never attended a race.
I've been to a lot of them.
Yeah.
I've been ruined though with the NASCAR because being in the positions we are, you get cool opportunities sometimes. And the last time I went to a NASCAR race at Kansas, I had like VIP passes with 5 Hour Energy. And I literally get to stand there on like Martin Truex's trailer and like all the free beer you could drink, free food. And I don't know, like it's really difficult to go and sit in the stands again.
You get ruined. People like I went to Arrowhead for Kansas City's season opener against the Chargers this year. And everybody I'm with, oh, this is great. We took all of our employees. So the company, we bought tickets for everybody, not cheap. And, oh, this is great. And it was cool. Granted, it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is I was driving and it took me 50 minutes to go 1 mile. And I was pissed about that. God. Didn't have the media parking lot that I'm accustomed to, right?
Yeah.
And didn't have, the bathroom right there in the press box, didn't have the free food, my privilege is showing. Being a member of the media and the easy in and out, because when you're done working, the crowd's gone. It has ruined me for attending NFL football games. I have zero desire to go back. It's awesome when you're there. If we could just, beam me up and back home, I would do it. But I'm not driving. I don't like the rigmarole that the proletariat has to deal with on a weekly basis. So I salute each and every one of you tailgaters out there who set your life calendars around, Iowa, Iowa State, Kansas City Chiefs, Vikings games, and you do it every freaking weekend. More power to you. Not interested.
I'll only go to Vikings games now. I used to have season tickets. I will only go now if it's the playoffs or like this year. My dad's a big Cowboys fan, so I'm taking him. He's never been to a Vikings. I don't even think Dad's ever. He may have been to an NFL game, but I'm not sure. Yeah. So we're going to go up to Vikings Cowboys, and that should be a really good game in the middle of November. So I actually bought tickets for him for Christmas on that. But
Cowboys by 9.
Yeah, they're better. Like that's my problem with the Vikings. I've been touting this on KXNO for years, and like there's just so many of these teams that they want to find their Mahomes and find their Josh Allen, and it's so hard. Like if I was running the Vikings, I just would have let Cousins go, signed a guy like Mariota for a fourth of the price, and then just loaded up my roster.
Right.
That's what I would do every year. But
for every Allen, Mahomes, there's a Heineke. There's more not good quarterbacks than there are elite quarterbacks. I mean,
like Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins are not worth what they get paid compared to what you could spend that money on with the rest of the roster.
Yeah,
you could have just an average guy out there who, like the Case Keenum here with the Vikings.
What do you do with Lamar Jackson?
I don't think I would pay him.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't have paid Deshaun Watson either. I wouldn't break the bank for him. His ability as a passer is suspect relative to elite passers. And at some point in time, he's not going to be able to run the way that he does. Like when Josh Allen has to let off the accelerator running the ball, he's got maybe the most elite arm in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson has a good arm, but he doesn't have the elite strength and accuracy that Allen does and that Mahomes does and that probably Herbert does. I think Herbert is somebody that I'm, not sneaky high on. Most people are high on him. He hasn't lived up to it this year. But, before we go, I do want to point something out. We talk about parlays and how I hit a lot of parlays a couple of weeks ago. Last week was, 2 weeks ago was my freaking, mountaintop moment. All right.
That was last week.
There is a rule in drug dealing, from my experience, being a child of the 80s and listening to a lot of gangster rap back in the day, that I think applies to wagering. And that is, don't get high on your own supply. And I believe that last week I got a little high on my own supply. The next thing I knew before I was done, making the run across the border and entering all these parlays, I had pretty much wagered 90% of my winnings, and I had taken all my seed capital out. Seed capital still out, not going back in. Buddy, I don't even want to tell you what that number was that I wagered last week.
I told you these parlays are dangerous.
And
don't very often. Like you're going against the averages, man.
I lost them all but one. So the one paid like $600. But I will say that I was down 70%. I don't even know the math. Don't do the math. I was down more than you want to know. Profit again. Haven't lost a cent, and I'm not going to. So this week, what am I doing? I'm betting it all. I'm going to come back big time. And next week, I'm going to be right back where I was, Chris, better than ever. So I'm looking forward to giving you that report next week.
Looking like a true addict.
Yep. But my point in bringing all this up is promise me, son, not to do the things I've done. Okay.
If it makes you feel any better, last Saturday, I think maybe it was the worst college football day I've ever had in sports betting. So we were lockstep. Like I think you see how many games I bet. I don't bet a lot on any. I bet a lot of games. And I think
you do.
I hit like 20% last week. It was horrible.
You bet so much that I have trouble sleeping. Not because I'm concerned for your financial well-being, because my phone keeps freaking dinging 11, 12 o'clock at night. Oh, another bet from Chris. Another bet from Chris.
What I do, I'm playing in bed with the lead on my iPad, researching games.
Yeah. Researching. Yeah, there's another word for it.
Thanks, Prairie Meadows.
Yes.
You can hear John's post game on Iowa Purdue coming up on Sunday. Yeah, I don't want the wind. I want this to be a really this is fun. This is what we like about sports: storylines, drama. You got a lot of it with the Iowa game this week, man.
You know,
be a good one.
I want the winds to howl the way that they did back in November of yore, that spawned Gordon Lightfoot to pen the classic American folk song, "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," "The Winds of November Remember." I want absolutely the winds to howl, and for Iowa to somehow eke out a win, because I think that is their that and the defense is their only shot.
Well, Ginger's snoring, so that means we got to go.
Time to go.
He's Jon Miller. I'm Chris Williams. Thanks for listening, everybody.